We are now live. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the listeners. Good evening to the panel. Good evening. Today is a sort of special show. It's single focus. It is single focus because of what the Prime Minister said a couple of weeks ago. And that is, he's thinking about setting up a peace ministry. Now, when I hear this, I said to myself, boy, it look like a war going on in Jamaica. Because if you're talking about peace, then there must be a war. I do not see a war happening in Jamaica right now. What I see happening is crime and punishment. Okay? So today we want to deep dive into this topic. Holness plans for a peace ministry. And with me today, we have John Arton, a man who a historian from Jamaica, who's based in Florida. We have Will Rattigan, former FBI agent, based in the New York, in the Maryland area. Las Crawford, he's based in Toronto, and brother Andy from South Africa. I am hoping to have a prince from South Africa join us today to discuss this topic. Gentlemen, welcome to White House Vibe Roundtable. Have you heard the announcement by the Prime Minister about this peace ministry?
Y- Yeah,
Go ahead,
I
Will.
can, yeah, I can start off. Yeah, um, the the prime minister in his convention speech about a month or so ago, about a month ago, he announced that he was he had commissioned a study concerning violence in Jamaica, and the study is supposed to be submitted to him by the end of this year. And at that point, he will he will seek about initiating a ministry called the ministry. He proposed the name Ministry of Peace and Human Development, but he said he was open to changing the name. But essentially, it would be looking at a way to control violence in Jamaica, and that he was he was quite aware that there are numerous agencies, but they were dealing with some of these issues. And he was talking about issues regarding the family and so on, children and so on and so forth. And he was trying to find a parent organization for all of these agencies. So he was going to take the agencies housed under the Ministry of Education, for example, and Ministry of National Security, and just place them under one super social security type agencies. He also mentioned this past Wednesday he appeared at a town hall meeting in Washington D.C. this past Wednesday, and he mentioned it again. And he said he was particularly interested in looking at the South African model because he said they went through struggle and strife, and they had to deal with the violence. And the way they went about it was to initiate the Peace and Reconciliation Commission, and they had hearings, and he said he was particularly interested in that. So that would make sense then for us to talk to people in South Africa who have an experience, with this agents, with this commission, and kind of get a sense from them. Well, what was the purpose behind coming up with this? What was the mandate? How did it function? And also, what's the end result? How are they living with? Because the commission has been disbanded now for years, and they want to talk about the findings and how did they extrapolate from the findings into making the society a more just, a more honest, a more open, and a more fair society, a more peaceful society. And that's what the Prime Minister of Jamaica is looking to do. So he's looking, Andy, just so you know, he's looking at the South African, or he says he's particularly interested in the South African model.
the Truth and Reconciliation
Yeah,
Committee.
truth and I'm sorry, not peace and reconciliation. Truth and reconciliation.
But before we proceed, I want to welcome Sister Maxine to the table. Oh, Sister Maxine, greetings.
Greetings. I'm in a noisy kitchen, so I will mute when I can.
That is okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Brother Andy. Brother Andy?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What can you tell us about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee?
Before that, Nita, let me just interrupt just to say that Andy should be joined shortly by Prince Buza Kazwelithini, and they've discussed the topics for today. And just so people get a sense of the roadmap as to where we're going, we're going to be talking about reflections, expectations, reality, and the future when it comes to the truth and reconciliation process. So sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Will, for the roadmap. Let me take you on a reflection journey. Let me take you on a reflection journey and define that reflection as experiences of the now. By then it was 50 million people. Now you have 62,027,503 people in South Africa, meaning your population has grown and new expectations would have emanated from the realities. I'm taking point number 3, the realities. Number 2, the expectations that we set out. Number 1, on the reflections, the experiences of the people of this country. If you are with me, I'll continue talking. You will indicate to me if you cannot hear me, Mikey.
Yes, I will.
Our experiences. Let me start about the painful experiences since 1652 with the arrival of Dutch people in the country and in the continent, particularly the southern part of the continent. They came through and spent 342 years, 1652 to 1994. Let me take you 4 years earlier, before the war for freedom, justice, equality ceased as a result of negotiations. What happened from 1652 to 1948, people of a different skin color, social standing that my people have been subjected to, my great-great-grandparents, including your great-great-grandparents who were in this part of the world or in this part of the continent. They were subjected to torture, to abuse, to beatings, to jailings, to hangings, to serious pain, physically, emotionally, in the soul, in the spirit, economically, and otherwise, politically and otherwise. Fast forward to 1948, when a Republic of South Africa was established, and apartheid, which means separateness, was formally instituted as law and as supreme law, as part and parcel of the driving motives of the Constitution, by the minorities, excluding the majority of the people of this country. By the way, Census 2022 says 50.1 million people are Africans, or are people of African origin, meaning that would constitute 84% of the population today. By then, the population was less than 30 million, around 1948. So from 1948 to 1994, let me stop at 1990 with the release of Nelson Mandela. Let me go back to 1963 when a sizable number of people were incarcerated as a result of the conviction based on the illegitimate laws and all attending regulations. This is 1963. And going back a little bit further would be 1912, when your great-grandfathers, some of them would be your grandfathers, um, uh, set up the African National Congress in a province now called the Free State. And in 1948, Dutch people referred to the Free State as the Vrystaat. Vrystaat, which is Dutch and Afrikaans, meaning Vrij means free, Staat means state. So where the ANC was set up was a province referred to as the Vrystaat by the Afrikaners, who had established 4 republics. They were referring to them as the Boer republics or the Boer republics. This is 1912. ANC was set up, was established 1948. You had those 4 Boer republics forming the Republic of South Africa, one united Republic of South Africa. 1963, the arrest, prosecution, and conviction of the leadership of our people, going to jail. And around that time, you also experienced strife, the killing of Martin Luther King, and 1968, the killing of Malcolm X around that time. So long story short, after the establishment of the Boer republics in 1948 and 1963, the incarceration, 1990 was the release of Nelson Mandela, 1992, Chris Hani was killed. Chris Hani was the commander of Umkhonto weSizwe. 1994, 27 April, we went to the polls. I remember the queues were snaking outside of my primary school. I was one of the earliest. I had actually woken up at 3 a.m. to make sure that I cast my vote on that particular day, to ensure that my X would mean that my contribution in the war of liberation, which is wrongly and popularly known as the freedom struggle. I never struggled for freedom. I went to war for our freedom and all other civil liberties, as Americans would refer them to. The right to determine who we are and the right to dignity as enshrined in the Bill of Rights. It is then against that background that after the vote and after the announcement of the results, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission was one of those critical instruments that would be used by the leading party in government. By then it was the majority, the African National Congress, to unite the nation. The nation would comprise of Africans like me and European Africans, those who would want to be called white people. The European Africans, and you had the colored Africans, formulating part and parcel of the larger groups of the people and the population. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was aimed at ensuring that the trauma that we experienced as a people, the trauma that our fathers, I remember my father was continuously chased and arrested by white police officers for being out of employment. I also remember that my grandfather was beaten to pulp in 1948 and died in 1952 as a result of the injury that he suffered. Many more were tortured and killed. And fast forward, some of us were born in the late 60s. And from that time, the organization, the African National Congress, had organized itself into a military formation, or had a military arm called Umkhonto weSizwe. And most of the leaders were exiled, while some of us were growing up as young men throwing stones in 1976. So when 1994 came, ANC got into power, or should I say the majority of the people of the continent and of the country were congregated in the form of the ANC as the leading party in government. And they established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And targets and objectives were set. The purpose of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission would then be sold to us as a unifying factor where people must confess what they have done so that they can be forgiven, so that we can hug and kiss on the cheeks and move on as a people that is satisfied, that is happy to be a united people and move on to become a winning nation. Little did we know that by 2023, as I'm seated here talking to you, there would be serious challenges. Let me stick to those reflections, to those experiences that I drew for you, so that we can then interrogate those experiences that I shared with.
Oh, load shedding. Something is wrong with Andy phone or his stream.
No, it will come back, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
While he's talking, one of the thoughts in the back of my head is that Jamaica has not experienced the level of violence as seen in South Africa. Our problem is a crime problem. Crime problem in Jamaica. So when the Prime Minister is saying about peace ministry and what have you, is it that he is using a hammer to kill a flea? Is this an overkill? Is it necessary?
Let me comment. Let me make one comment though. There is a significant difference. During the armed struggle in South Africa, the violence was violence to overthrow the government. There's a significant difference between Spear of the Nation, which is the ANC military arm, organized to overthrow the apartheid government. The violence that they is not crime in the sense of arbitrary violence. What he's talking about there, and therefore the solution after they came to power, the solution of introducing what is it called, reconciliation programs, which were partly, the church was involved with it, big time and so on. It was a national effort. It's a totally different content to those issues, as opposed to arbitrary crime, which is thieving and robbing and shooting. It's a different thing in a country which is going under criminal. So I just want to make that point. They obviously would have had crime in South Africa, but the main crime, quote unquote crime, was crime organized to overthrow the government. After the launching of their military arm under the ANC, when Mandela was arrested, and during the time he was in prison, this was because of their actions directly to overthrow the government, which part of the struggle. So there is the difference in quote unquote crimes is quite different in a country which is suffering from what we use as crime.
But if I can jump in here, John, I see the difference even much bigger than that. The difference is that the South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee was not a committee to fight crime or solve the crime problem in South Africa. That was not the objective of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee.
Stick up in last. John, we're not seeing you, We're not seeing you well, bro.
I can hear.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can hear you all right, man. You don't have to worry about seeing me.
Realize you know sneak off in the background, John.
No, we don't just want to just see your ball head. Andy's back.
Okay,
Andy, go ahead, Andy.
My apologies. You know, we have a serious load shedding challenge here. So when one of the towers, when it runs out of when the batteries run down, you lose connection. And they steal the criminals steal the batteries. One of these solar batteries that used to sell for 18,000, that belongs to MTN and Vodacom, is now sold in the black market for 30,000. So criminals, when there's load shedding, they go for their towers. We were talking about the reflections, the experiences, where the process came through, what led to the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and some of our personal experiences, our familial experiences, or experiences that either excited us about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and those aspects that irritated some of the political parties when this Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established. You are going to say to me, which are those parties? You have the Azanian People's Organization and the Pan-African Congress, Pan-African Congress. The Azanian People's Organization was led by the late Steve Biko, who was killed on the 12th of September 1977. Azapo believed that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is a farce. It's not going to yield anything. They told us this post-1994, when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established. They actually boycotted the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Were they right? It's one question that we'll answer as we go along. The experiences that I've shared with you are bringing me into this conversation with yourselves to say, when a peace ministry is set up, I agree with many of the speakers on your site and many of the commentators and many analysts on your site that says you can't have peace without justice. And you can't have justice without people coming through, one, either to confess so that they can be forgiven, or they if they choose to be bullheaded, then law enforcement and the Department of Justice would then be able to deal decisively with them in terms of prosecuting them for the war crimes. Remember, I said I never wanted to use the freedom struggle because I wanted to take it to its logical conclusion. People needed to have been charged for war crimes, and those war crimes are for the ones. There's my brother on the line, His Royal Highness Prince Buza Gazwelithini. I am sure the host would like to welcome the prince. I will share a little bit of the story. The prince is the son of the late King Goodwill Zwelithini, a king and a gentleman, our father, a father of the largest nation or groupings in South Africa called the Zulu people, established in the southwestern part of the continent, with a population of 12.4 million people in that area and in that space. And like I have been sharing with you, Census 2022, the population growth from 2011 to 2022 has been 2.4 million people. So meaning by then there was a sizable number during the apartheid days, a sizable number of about plus minus 5 to 6 million Zulu people who suffered in the hands of the Afrikaners, or those who wanted the continent and the country to remain white, in spite of the fact that we were the majority and we are still the majority, and we will continue to be the majority based on Census 2022 from Statistics SA that says the number of European Africans, for the want of a better term, European Africans, the number is decreasing because most of them are leaving for Australia, the UK, and the other part of your world there. I don't know if they go to Jamaica, but I hope to talk Afrikaans with them when I find them in the streets of Jamaica.
The prince got knocked off. Seems like he's having some load shedding challenges.
Yeah, yes. I'm sure they are sorting it out. He will come through.
Yeah.
A wonderful gentleman who was his father's envoy internationally on international affairs and businesses. A gentleman who at the age of 10 was put on an accelerated leadership development program. A gentleman whose father would train him in conflict resolution and conflict management, who would be unleashed during the times of that violence that you remember in South Africa, that internecine violence of that violence that was referred to as black on black violence, but largely sponsored by the agents of racial oppression, of suppression of our people, of murderers of our people. The prince was, amongst others, responsible for ensuring that there's peace, stability, and justice in his part of the land and in his part of the world as a result of the father. I said the father, the king is referred to as Ingonyama, meaning Ingonyama means lion. Ingonyama means the alpha lion. Like you have the Simba, the Lion King. Actually, those Mickey Mouse and Fish and Chips titles comes from this part of the land, stolen from Africa. I almost said and dropped off in Jamaica, but long story short, Ingonyama, the Lion King, can only be the Lion King from their first lineage, the first king, amongst others, King Shaka. You know, King Shaka, and having it defeated the British army, carrying most sophisticated weapons, and our people carrying spears and shield. So the prince is a man of very serious standing within our community, within our continent, within our country. His father, I was blessed with an opportunity to meet the Lion King, to meet the Alpha, a wonderful gentleman who would not go into any meeting without having it praised, whether you want to say Allah or God, and he was not shy to be the man in the middle. He was not shy to call you to order when you're out of order. He was not shy to deal with those who are sponsoring apartheid and violence, even amongst his people. I am sure His Royal Highness is experiencing some technical problems, but he will come on and he will share his experiences. In the meantime, I will want us to maybe go into a discussion or a conversation about what I have shared with you, because he's got some personal stories to share with you. Some of them very, very painful. We have a mother on the line here, Maxine. The prince's mother was hacked with a machete. He was left for dead. A whole queen was left for dead when the palace where the prince grew up was run down by a political party that was sponsored by the Afrikaners to destabilize the process of peace and stability in South Africa. So the prince will share his experiences. I shared with you my personal experiences from 1652 until 2023. In terms of experiences, we will go to the second point, which would be what were our expectations. But I will allow His Royal Highness Prince Buza when he comes through. I have introduced him to you, to yourselves, and I have protocol to respect and allow him to talk now.
Prince Buza, welcome. Welcome to the White House Vibes. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us, Prince? The mic.
Apparently he's not hearing.
Yeah.
Lass, go ahead with you were making some remarks.
Yes. I was listening to Andy, and I am tending to believe that the context under which the Truth and Reconciliation Committee was formed in South Africa is a totally different context from the situation that exists in Jamaica. In Jamaica, we have a serious crime problem which the government and the security forces are unable to deal with. In the situation in Jamaica is as if they're trying to use the peace ministry as something to fight the crime problem in Jamaica. The Peace and the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa was not a crime fighting mechanism. Right? Andy, are you hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yeah, man, we hear you clearly.
No, Andy. I'm saying,
Yeah, I can
Andy.
hear you loud and clear, my brother.
Okay.
I will allow you to deliver your comments and respond to your comments should the need arise. I will be directed by Mikey, who's the host. He will then give me orders. I will comply and complain later.
Okay, I'm saying the context is that the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa was not a crime-fighting mechanism, as the peace ministry in Jamaica is conceptualized to be right now. Is that so?
Apartheid was declared a crime against humanity. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was based, amongst others, on the lines of the United Nations resolution that declared apartheid a crime. So for the want of the definition that you are sharing with me, you are talking about, should I say, petty crime, advisedly so. Advisedly so, petty crime, advisedly so. In our case, it was a human rights crime since the UN has a resolution on that. So both in our context, there is an element of crime, although at a slightly different level or levels and phases. But long story short, both of them, I am sure, seek to address crimes that have been perpetrated against people. Let me deliver this one and give you space. There are people who were killed as a result of the instruction that came from the Afrikaners and their agents. There are people who, until up to now, a friend of mine that I went to school, high school with, has never been found. And there's a unit from the Directorate of Priority Crimes Investigation, the Hawks, that they are still looking for the unmarked graves. Some of the perpetrators, some of the killers, police killers, are the ones who are identifying those unmarked graves and the shafts into which the bodies were thrown in after they were killed, and many others. I choose to restrict myself to the different levels of crime and categories, different categories of crime. I was not undermining your definition of crime by saying petty crime. I wanted to give context to human rights crime, or what you and I would call genocide. Yes, maybe genocide. They stopped short. Remember where we are involved. It can't be genocide. It can only be genocide when it's Europeans or something of that nature.
It confirms the point, Lass. That's the bottom line.
We have the Prince, Prince Musa. He's not hearing me.
Can you hear us?
Gentlemen, while that's sorted out, I think it is safe to say that the question in our minds right now is, what can Jamaica learn from South Africa?
Hey, I'm really struggling with the network here and the breaking transition.
He's on now.
He's on now. Prince Musa, welcome, my brother.
Oh God.
Yeah, I don't
Andy,
know. The load shedding.
Andy, them have some serious load. Andy, is he in Durban?
He's outside of Durban in one of the palaces, one of his late father's palaces.
Yeah, because I think they have load shedding. I mean, I got the load shedding.
Yeah, he's in that part of the world. They told me that they have load shedding He has UPS that he uses for lighting. I'm sure the problem would be with the tower there, the network.
Okay. Well, let's proceed.
Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Herb.
Very crucial here to what Lass was saying. I don't want Lass to miss the forest because of the trees. Right? The bottom line, Lass, is this. There were in Jamaica, like in South Africa, outside elements that created these situations. Think about it. They created these situations and then they forced the hand of the overseers to be very vicious and violent in their administrations. Right? Just we see the same thing right now in Israel. Viciousness and violence impacting the population. It was the same thing in Jamaica. Once they got Siaga to commit to removal of Michael Manley and to dim Michael Manley's presidential aspect as the third world president, then they applied every imaginable force you can think of. And what needs to happen here is that the JLP has to come clean, but this is after a presentation, most likely by the military intelligence unit.
Stick up in her. Make Mikey try to acknowledge the prince and see if we can get him in.
Yeah.
Mikey.
Prince Musa. Hello, can you hear us? Hello, Prince Musa.
From his expression, I don't think he's
no, he's
here.
All right, continue.
Andy, hold on, Andy. Maybe you should have him join us. I mean, his image can be up, but he can join us by phone,
by WhatsApp or something.
Mm-hmm.
It probably take a while to tune in. So
yeah, but that should happen. Yeah, Herb,
yeah.
You were saying.
Yeah, because when you look at what you would need to be a participant in this is for the U.S. to come clean as well. What were the demands made of the Siaga administration? Before there were an administration, what were the demands made of them as opposition? When Reagan decided he was going to get rid of all communist, pro-communist, socialist, whatever governments in Latin America, the Caribbean, and in Africa, these were all former British colonies that he was going after. And he was supporting this program that they were going to root out, eradicate, and crush all these movements. Started with the Arbens in Guatemala, and or I might be mistaken. Started with the guy in Mossadegh in Iran, then Arbens in Guatemala, and of course they were supporting what was going on in South Africa all those decades. Kept Mandela in jail all that period of time. We're supporting the brutal repression of the South African citizens, and in other African states. They will overthrow people in Ghana. You name it. You go through the whole list. The U.S. had a hand in all of that, along with the U.K. and the Dutch. So
the question before us, Herb, is the South African experience relevant to Jamaica?
And this is what I'm explaining, Mikey. It is relevant because they did the same thing to Jamaica. They were giving directions to the opposition, undermining a democratically elected government. They use a lot of psychological warfare in branding Michael a communist and in applying tactics normally used in Vietnam and other states that they were trying to take over.
The problem is, Herb, that whatever Holness is considering I don't think is gonna be anything to encompass what you are talking about.
It has to be. It has to be wholesale, last, or it's not going to work.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Because some of the things you talking about really going to indict the Jamaica Labour Party, and the whole history of what they defend. So I don't see.
Come clean.
Yeah.
They gotta come clean. You gotta wash your hands in public and ask for public forgiveness.
Oh,
I think Maxine
hold up it. Maxine, can you mute your mic?
Can I mute it?
Yes, we're getting a feedback. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Right. No, I was gonna say they're gonna have to wash their hands in public like the Africans and the white South African leadership did, right? They're going to have to come clean completely. And in turn, what has to happen is there has got to be some program of restitution made to a lot of people, up to and including the Tivoli Gardens and other incidents that occurred. Because all of these things occurred in succession. You know, we've never gotten rid of what happened to Jamaica in the 70s. Never.
So based on that, then a peace ministry is necessary then?
The peace ministry is necessary, but they're going to be using the same peace management initiative tactics that were effectively used before. But this time, you're going to know the full truth. You're going to want to know what tore down the government and what destroyed all of these various gardens or townships or whatever in Jamaica. Who undermined it? Who killed it? 2 dozen or so PNP youth activity members, and why was that had to be done, right? Come clean on all the killings and the murders. Who were the MIU and the JDF ordered to assassinate? Who was the police ordered to assassinate? Who were they being paid by to do a lot of assassinations? Jamaica said it was only 800 people who died. We were counting at one point that there were well over 2,000 people died between 79 and 80. And if you include 78 or 76 all the way up to 81, you're going to get a lot of thousands of murders that have gone unanswered. A lot of dead people. Who sent Cecil Connor, also known as Charles Little Nut Miller, into Jamaica from Grenada to be Siaga's right-hand man? Because he has claimed he's killed personally over 500 people and he's still alive. We need a guy like him to speak up. And we know who he used to work for, right? What was Massup's role? What was the PNP Spangler's role for the? Yeah, they need to. The both sides need to come clean, but more so the JLP. But after the MIU lays out what happened from say 1960s forward, because Bustamante and Sierra got a role to play. They were always pro-violent in those days, and versus a statesman like Norman Manley who wanted to do things in Parliament or to use the ballot box to accomplish things.
Herb, can we bring Rattigan in? Rattigan.
Maxine wanted to say something for a while.
Yeah, Maxine. Yeah, go ahead, Maxine.
Before Will before Will or Maxine comes in, maybe what I would want to listen from yourselves, which will help us focus the discussion in trying to answer my brother's question. Your reflections of the Jamaican situation. We have the South African reflection, our experiences. Let's juxtapose it with the Jamaican situation based on, I'm following up on what Hep is saying, unpacking. So when you juxtapose the two situations, it will lead us to the next point, which is expectations. What did we expect when we set up when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was set up, and what are your expectations of the truth and reconciliation that you're looking for, you meaning the people of Jamaica, as well as what do you expect the peace ministry to deliver at the end of the next 3 years, or at the end of the next 5 years, or when you have your annual performance programs in place for that ministry. When we go in that fashion, we would now be galvanizing the energies from the two experiences, so that at the end of the day, we have our reflections in terms of the people who disappeared in South Africa, the people who disappeared in Jamaica. What happened to those people who disappeared in SA? What happened to the people who disappeared in Jamaica? What are the experiences of their families, their brothers, their friends, their teachers, people like yourselves? So when we stick to that kind of a value chain, we will then be able to say at the third point, we'll then be able to say what is the reality.
Okay.
Is it realistic that we should be calling for a truth and reconciliation? Is it realistic that we should be having a peace ministry? And your responses from that point will lead you to say what will happen in the future.
Okay. Maxine?
Yes. My thought is, next couple weeks or next month or two, there's going to be a Bob Marley movie that is exploring at the center of it the peace concert and the fact that he was shot, and and all of this coming out of the political violence that was used in the 70s. As Herb was explaining, the 70s was a flashpoint, not only in Jamaica, but I remember entering college in 1974 and entering America in 1970 and being influenced by the Black Power movement. And when I entered college, it was the African liberation struggles in South Africa and Angola, Mozambique, that was happening.
Influencing the colleges.
Right. And at the same time, I remember Walter Rodney, Rosie Douglas, Trevor Monroe coming into our Caribbean Studies platform here in America. I was obviously in school in New York. And so as I understand, I was wondering to myself, I wonder if it's a Bob Marley movie that is triggering this thought process, because the peace concert is, and I think prior on Netflix, there was this I Shot the Sheriff, which all of it is, discussing Bob and his role and, in this peace, bringing these parties together, and what is it? Siaga and Manley on the stage and all of this. So I'm thinking to myself that Jamaica's economic situation now, and the violence and the crime, everybody on the street knows that it is relating to the political garrisonization and the division of the people and the bringing in the direct bringing in of the guns into the Jamaican society, that it can be tracked, you know, because prior you could know 1 and 2 people have gone or so on, you know, but you directly knew when the Jamaican people, not the army or the police, when the Jamaican people were armed and who was arming them, and even the division, as Herb was saying, of the gardens into these spaces. So I understand coming up in the certainly in the music throughout the years and from the inner city and so on and so forth, that this division of Jamaica into garrisons and how the political structure is built on it. You understand? Built on the voting and how the urbanization of the people coming from the country into the cities and how it is managed, that it is the root of all of this violence and you know, that they would be seeking to manage now. So I'm curious in my mind, listening, because I always thought that they needed to have a truth and reconciliation similar to South Africa. I see a lot of things that are similar to South Africa in the sense of, as a Rastafarian, coming through and understanding what happened to the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey in his projection of how the first political party in Jamaica and how he was dealt with and what came out of that and what has happened to Black power or any kind of African identity in the Jamaican society. So I understand. I don't know what they're coming with. You know, I don't know, like I said, if it's this Hollywood peace concert energy that they are layering in on the violent situation.
Prince
but
is here.
It definitely is related to politics and human rights of people, as Andy has said, would have been affected and is being affected because we can't vote anybody in because we are constrained by this design.
Maxine, Maxine?
And you reach out to him.
Prince, can you hear us? Prince Booza, can you hear us?
Still not hearing.
Oh, wait, Andy. You should probably call him and give him the number to call in. So his image can be there, but he can actually correspond with us through the telephone. Nita, put up the telephone number, please. Andy was asking for it so that.
Yeah, please send it. Just send it to my WhatsApp. Prince Booza, can you hear us?
There it is. There it is on the screen, Andy.
I can't see the number. Just send it to my WhatsApp.
I'll text it to you. I'll text it to you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is this a WhatsApp number?
It is.
Okay.
It's a WhatsApp number, Nita, right?
Google, yeah. Google number.
Yeah.
It's a Google. So, Maxine, you finish? In all of this, you see, in all of this, I'm still faced with the question, what can we learn from South Africa? Let us assume that the government is going down that path of establishing this ministry and a truth and reconciliation process. What should we expect? I think that is what Andy's asking. What should we expect? How do we see this process? Radigan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the Prime Minister, I don't know who's advising him, because they're taking things from all over the place and there's no rhyme or reason. And I think the point has been made as to what should we expect. Because first of all, you have to determine are we looking at crimes against individuals? Or are we looking at crimes against the state? In the South African context, it was crimes against an organization and crimes against a state. In Jamaica, it's crime committed, especially homicide, between individuals. So the second question is, how far do you want to go with this? Herb is saying you really can't get to the root of this until you go all the way back, and because some of those people are still alive, and some of what we're seeing in terms of violence are manifestations of what took place back in the 60s and in the 70s. I don't think the prime minister wants to go that far. I think somebody, they advised him, but like Les says, I don't think he wants. I think he's looking at it in the context like from 2016 till now. He's saying, okay, let me just deal with what's happened on my watch, in terms of the violence, because he said that, look, I want to leave this place, Jamaica, in a better condition than I found it. Now, when he took office, the murder rate was 1,208. It was 1,208 in 2015. He took office in February 2016. I mean, in fact, I have the numbers here. In 1,208, it was. In 2015, it was 1,208. In 2016, it was 1,350. In 2017, it was 1,616, and it hasn't gone down. It hasn't gone back to 1,208 or below since he took over. So I don't think he's and so now if he tries to go beyond that, people are going to say, well, wait a minute, hold on one second. If crime was 1,200, if the murder rate was 1,208, and it hasn't gone down to 1,208 since, why don't you start at 2016 when you took over? So to Lasse's point, I don't think he wants to go to where Herb is saying he should chart his course. Herb is saying chart your course from the 60s, the 70s, come all the way up, because what we're seeing didn't happen overnight. It happened as a result, a constant buildup of everything that took place, starting with the politicians bringing in guns and establishing garrisons and so on and so forth. So, and this point is well taken in the sense that what are we expecting? Because I think the expectations are going to be different. In South Africa, they knew, okay, they expected that the commission would be looking at crimes committed against the ANC and individuals going back for a period of time. This prime minister, I don't think he's going to go back to the 1960s or the 1970s or even the 80s. I think he's going to go to 2016 because his thing is what? His thing is to control violence because it's rampant right now. So what he's doing is using this ministry as a law enforcement tactic / strategy. That's what he's doing. He's not trying to get people to come out and say, well, I was responsible. Oh, another point. Oh, need to state this. Do you think the U.S. government is going to, and this is for Herb, no, to kind of process. You think the U.S. government is going to sit by and watch some of these guys come out and speak the truth and say, oh, yes, the U.S. government was behind this and they gave me money, they gave me training, they gave me resources to do the following things? That ain't going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, keep this in mind, Ratty.
Mm-hmm.
It has already happened with some of the cable releases, right?
But that was inadvertence, though. That wasn't deliberate. I mean,
some of it is deliberate because some of it is them getting opening.
We're not hearing you good, Herbie. Can you say that point again?
Yeah. Some of what is being released in the cable traffic now are batches from that period, right? And a lot of it is the cable traffic between the embassy, and some of it has been CIA traffic. So it's out there, and we can't really separate and say, oh, one was about organizations and action against those organizations. One was about people and gangs. In both countries, it was the same thing, right? There were the ANC, and you had the Zulus, and then you had with Jamaica, you pretty much had Shower, Spangler, and and other individuals that you had to nail down, which that would include who was doing the supporting for the JLP, a majority support, whether it's the Jamaica Gleaner Company and certain people within the Gleaner Company, some people within the commerce, like PSOJ, and all of these other folks who was playing footsie with the US and costing Jamaican lives. Believe me, it's been documented, well documented.
Yeah, but
and even today, Will, they have secret documents at Up Park Camp that the people in the Tivoli Gardens asked about it to
right,
go
and they
back,
haven't released them.
and they never released them. Yeah.
But here's the point I'm trying to make is that self-preservation is key. And these politicians, some of them, you know, who did dastardly things back in the 70s and 80s, they're around. And I just cannot see the prime minister saying, I'm going to set up this commission, and all of you guys, you're going to have to come and confess your sins. I just don't see it happening, because some of the politicians in parliament today, they're direct beneficiaries of some of those things, and they're going to be implicated. So that's why I'm saying that, and I agree with you that
Well,
some of
keep
those
in
things.
mind, it's a forgiveness program too. It's not you're going to implicate them and put them off in jail. You have to come to some agreement. Okay, you're not eligible for prosecution, but you might be eligible for some form of restitution.
Right, you give them immunity. But the thing is, do you think they want to? Some of these people have been denying their involvement for years, and for them now suddenly to show up and say, well, you know, even though I've been saying I wasn't involved, I really was involved. You know, I was behind this shooting, I was behind that killing, I was behind that. I don't think that's where I understand what you're saying. That's where we should go with it if we really want to do a thorough job. But I don't think when the prime minister said it, I think it was a knee-jerk reaction, and he just said, oh yeah, the South Africans, they did it, so we're going to try it. But I don't think he's planning to go that far.
Yeah.
And
well, you see,
right now,
we introduced it twice before. And he and Peter Phillips agreed that they should have considered it a while back in 2016 or so. And then I heard about it another time. And so now, you know, here's the thing, Will. You cannot legislate common sense, and you can't legislate forgiveness. You throw caution to the wind. You get this thing done, and guess what? If he wants to leave a legacy behind, this might be it. This might be how he can save himself. You know, you guys.
Hear my take, Will.
Hold on, last. I want to bring John Artin into the discussion. John.
Yes.
You think the question?
Here's my perspective, gentlemen and ladies.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with all of you, and I will try and cut to the chase. We're living in a time when there is more importance on the cover of the book rather than the content. For example, in the current war in the Middle East, there is no other, all of the Western media are united in saying that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is the only army in the world that tell people, we are going to bomb you, so you must move and go somewhere where the bomb don't lick you. I watch BBC, I watch CNN, I watch Fox News, I watch Al Jazeera, I watch every news media, and all of them package the news to look palatable, to come over friendly, to say that the IDF is the only army in the world that tell people We're going to kill you if you don't move from point A to point B. And therefore, they are trying to avoid killing civilians. That is packaging the news to look good. What is the Prime Minister trying to do? The same thing. Him using a positive cover, quote unquote. The famous, what is the term? The famous, I just wrote it down. The famous, oh Jesus, reconciliation, what name? Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Everybody in the world know what that is. It's the same thing them use in South Africa to bring some amelioration between the past, the old regime and the new regime. Believe you me, what allow it to work in South Africa is the only way it can work anywhere in the world. That the working people have the handle and not the blade. So, him package it this way. That's what him going to come and say on the TV. Him going to announce it. Them going to try out Truth and Reconciliation. But it's not going to do what Herb thinks. And it's certainly not going to do what South Africa was doing or is doing. So, the purpose of it is to make us become complacent. Oh Lord, we're going to do Truth and Reconciliation. That is a name. There is no intention to go back in the way that Herbie talking about. And I'm willing to bet money that is not going to happen. Who is going to come out and say, I burned down the old people home? I forget the place where
Eventide.
Eh? Eventide. Famous. I remember that incident, you know, as a little boy. Well, I was a little older than a little boy. But the point is, all these incidents that you're referring to, of course, a good and proper reconciliation program will be doing what Lass is saying, what Herb is saying, and what we would like to see. And spanning not just the current affairs. It's not just about petty crime. It's also about human rights crime, like burning down the old people home and bringing guns into the country and setting up garrison. Many of the current challenges that Jamaica face go back into the period of Manley. And the most important thing is the fact that it's connected to forces outside of the country, which is what Herb is talking about. Do you think that a government of the Jamaica Labour Party, as it currently stands, would be interested to show how the U.S. Embassy and the forces in the embassy and the CIA any more than when, you know, in Gaza, foreign media cannot go in there and show what's going on, where them finding at the tunnel. Them can show you any amount of tunnel. But the point I'm making is packaging a tried and tested method in a way to make us become complacent and to make us argue over what is the scope. The scope will never be going in the direction of what is being done in South Africa. It requires a different alignment of forces. People at the grassroots would have to be in charge of it in the way that they are in South Africa, which is what Andy spoke to us a couple sessions ago, where the police going to come, the military, the MIU is going to come and tell people who will the target and all these things and the calling names and so on. No, this is just a terminology to package something to make us debate and spend 2 hours believing that they may do it one day down in the future, or it may have the scope, it's not going to have it.
Can I say something?
Go.
All right, yeah, cool. Yes, the ambassador. Okay.
Did we get cut off?
I'm
not sure what's
I'm only seeing you, Mikey.
I'm only seeing you too.
I'm with you, Mikey.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, go ahead.
Mikey, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
We need to look at the proposal of the ministry in the context of the GLP conference and what is happening with the government at this time. At the conference, what we saw was the Prime Minister delivering a conference speech that was lackluster. It lacked real information. It lacked any new proposals to deal with the economy. It lacked any new proposals to deal with crime. It lacked any meaningful or new proposals to deal with the social issues facing the country. The speech he made really had no substance to it. I mean, a couple of the earlier speakers at the conference made more impact on the conference than the Prime Minister in relation to his speech. So we have to look at the Peace Ministry proposal in that context. It seems to me like, in the absence of having any new proposals to deal with crime, in the absence of any new proposals to deal with many other social issues, and in the absence of having any successes to show at the conference, the leader, the Prime Minister, had to have something, one, as a form of distraction, and also as a form of hanging some hope around which people would be distracted from his lack of any new proposals to deal with the crime problem. At the conference, one of the things that was noticeable to me was that the Minister of National Security was asked to give a report to the conference. The Minister of National Security did not have a prepared report to give to the conference. If I don't know if you guys watched the conference, right? But the Minister of National Security did not have a prepared report. He was talking for, he probably got like an half an hour to speak. And what he talked about was when Andrew Holness came to power, and Andrew Holness asked him to go into the field to check on the readiness of the political organization for the election that was coming up. And he went into the field and came back and told Andrew Holness that, oh, the party is ready. He did not, there was nothing to report on the issue of national security. So in that context, I see this ministry as a sham. It will never happen. I don't think this Holness have a serious intention of having a ministry of peace. And then after that, he introduced the idea of a truth and reconciliation thing as another talking point. I don't see it as becoming a reality. I see it as just a sham.
Andy, you have
Brother
heard,
Mikey.
You have heard the lack of confidence in the government doing anything. And I think this lack of confidence is born of our experience in Jamaica. You know, we have no confidence in the government. When you guys started the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, you had confidence in the ANC that the ANC would proceed. So what more can you tell us?
Yeah, let me take you to point number 2. What were our expectations? Yeah, we expected the ANC to take charge in terms of prosecutions. We expected the ANC to lead the criminal justice cluster and ensure that there is justice for all. We expected people to walk up to the offices or the places of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and say, I want to be part of the greater and better and free South Africa. And I am going to do that by saying, I killed person A, person B, person C, and I buried them at Flag Plus. Will know Flag Plus, a notorious farm where activists and liberation movement soldiers were tortured and killed. Some of the people who killed the freedom soldiers, the freedom warriors, they would kill a person whilst torture him, chop him to pieces whilst they were having a barbecue next to the site where a man would be brutalized with machetes. They would brutalize, wash their hands, go and turn that piece of meat on the barbecue and enjoy themselves whilst people were being rendered lifeless intentionally. So we expected such conduct. We expected people to come through and say, I have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is the person who gave me instruction, the president of the whites only government, maybe P.W. Botha or de Klerk and all of those who preceded de Klerk, who sent out Nelson Mandela from Robben Island. Those were our expectations. We also expected those in the operational forces of our people. Welcome, Prince, if you can hear us. If you cannot hear us, you can just switch off your camera and use the mic only. if you can hear us. Can you hear us, Prince? Yeah, he's really struggling, as all of you can tell. Can you hear us, Prince? Ndabezita.
Scott.
Yeah. We had expectations, and the expectations was justice for the majority. Did we want to apply the scorched earth policy with regard to other people who were not of the same race as we are? No. We expected the truth to come out, people to be forgiven, and those who are, like I said earlier on, those who are bullheaded or stubborn-headed, to face the full might of the law so that they can be prosecuted. Those were our expectations. Mikey, if you allow me, I am looking at my time. I've been on this platform for 1 hour 25 minutes. If you allow me, I'll go to point number 3.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
what
brother.
is the reality given our expectations? The reality is utter disappointment in that only a few foot soldiers of apartheid were sent to jail. But in my analysis and in my definition, that you understand, those were just runners. They were not the guys who came up with the instructions, with the strategy and tactics. Those were the guys who were given guns to go and shoot the people's poet. They shot him 9 times, lobbed hand grenades into his house. So this is the reality of what we are living with. Prince, can you hear us? Yeah, these were the realities. We can see the Prince. Blela Gogo, we can see the Prince, but we can't hear. We can't hear.
Can he call in
struggling
on WhatsApp?
I'm struggling.
He's there.
We can hear you, Prince. Welcome.
Yeah. You good?
Prince, can you hear us? No. Yeah, go finish what you're saying, Andy. Go ahead.
I'm struggling. Oh.
Okay. Continue, Andy.
The reality is hard and cold and painful. Personally, my grandmother was kicked out of her house in 1959 after the death of my grandfather in 1952. And the reason why my grandmother was kicked out of her house was that she was a woman, and women were not allowed to own homes or houses in that state of apartheid. That, to me, and to all of us, is a crime. It's a violation of the rights of an individual. Further filling in the United Nations Declaration of Apartheid as a crime against humanity. And up to this far, myself, never had the opportunity to go and plead the case on behalf of my late grandmother, just to drag out an apology from the system, from what you popularly and lovingly call the Babylon system. I'm now going to use the Bob Marley terminology. The Babylon system has never had a space for my grandmother's apology to be dragged out or to be forwarded. So reality is hard, is cold, is vicious, is violent, is painful. If I can be complaining about my grandmother's pain. What more about those whose children heads were crushed or were crushed by hand grenades being stuck in their mouths and the pins being pulled and their heads being smashed to smithereens by those hand grenades. So the reality is painful. I don't know what your reality is, and what you expect um, from that reality to create or to craft a future of a happy people in Jamaica, less angry people in the streets of Jamaica, socio-economic situation being leveled, and people being affirmed, women being affirmed, people with disabilities being affirmed, children being provided with better opportunities to do robotics and coding, so that this fourth industrial revolution within which we find ourselves in are then able to use artificial intelligence to make sure that your country's technology is used for the advancement of the people of Jamaica. Same with us, struggling to ensure that a majority of the people are cyber smart. Air would know and Will would know that I have a program called Cyber Smart with Andy Mashail. Our people need to be cyber smart, and government, having it use this platform that we are using, creates ministries and creates platforms that will ensure that generation after yourself is better than yourselves as on this platform.
Yeah, I just want to respond to Andy a little bit. The problem with our situation, Andy, is that at this point in time, we have no idea what the objectives of this Ministry of Peace is. It has just been thrown out there. We don't know if the objectives would be arrived at through some collective reasoning, or it will be arrived at solely by the government or by the Prime Minister. We have no idea, right? But
yes,
from what you're saying, it would seem like in the South African situation, a lot of people don't believe that it served its purpose. Is that what you're saying, Andy?
I am happy to respond to this effect. Whilst talk is doing rounds in Jamaica for a Ministry of Peace, I would assume that you would be requested to send submissions, and or whoever is the representative of a certain area, of a certain block, of a certain town or region, would then be approached in the form of senators, would then be approached to say the people think that the peace ministry must look at the following matters. I am sure when the people of Jamaica are then able to engage in this type of thinking, it would lead to them influencing the objectives and the whole modus operandi of the peace ministry. I am failing to understand, appreciate the use of the concept peace ministry if it would be established to deal with violence, which is a crime. Also, depending on who is unleashing that violence and for what purpose, whether that violence that's being unleashed would be tantamount to what the United Nations, in our case, resolved or declared as a crime against humanity. So the context between the two countries or between the two situations or scenarios informs this kind of a response from me that says we should send submissions to whoever we are going to be voting for in 2024. Am I correct? You are going to the polls in 2024. Given that our representatives who are going to parliament, who are identifying themselves as horses that would be running for the needs of the people, would need to influence the establishment of such a ministry. I mean, the Ministry of Peace would look in your context as you have painted the picture. If it is based on violence, violence must come with criminal charges. Violence must come with people being tried by the Department of Justice. If the ministry is not coming to address those elements, I am not sure on what platform would the ministry be resting on.
That's a good question, because in Jamaica, I think there's not a politician we trust, and I'm not sure how this peace ministry is going to be implemented. What is clear is that this present government and prime minister, they are bankrupt. They lack ideas in dealing with the issue of crime and violence. They will not listen to Mr. Rattigan despite his offer of help and many others in the diaspora. It's a government that is, I would want to call it a gangster government.
What sounds about this side?
I think it's a gangster government. So where do we go from here? Where do we go? The PMP is supportive of the peace ministry. Golden came out and said he's not against it. Where do we go from here?
We prepare our working people manifesto, which will include a section on crime, and there will be a section on transparency and what's the other term?
Governance.
Mr. Rattigan, these are your terms, I've been listening.
Accountability.
Eh?
Transparency and accountability.
Right. So that's our role. Our role where we are, Mr. Nito, we're not forming a party. We're not in government. We can only offer to, put forward a set of things that we think will be of benefit in the medium to long term. And that's one of the things I suggest. We are on track to develop such a paper or such a document, and that's the role I see. And we also are doing this on our programs. We are speaking to these issues. We are trying to show people where the book say rabbit, but when you open it, it really is a wolf. So you can't watch the cover. You have to also look on the inside.
Ratigan. You're the criminal justice man. Where we go from here?
He's on a call or something. He's talking to the prince or the king.
All right, where do we go from here? We go nowhere. This is posturing. This is just political posturing. We know that this prime minister he has a track record of making promises and not delivering. We know he has a track record of saying within the first 100 days of his administration he would introduce term limits and other things. And those promises were made back in 2015, 2016, and he hasn't delivered. We also know that this prime minister is a liar. Liar because when he was challenged last year about his promise to introduce legislation concerning term limits for the office of the prime minister, he said, I didn't do it because although it was in the 2016 manifesto, his party's manifesto, it was not in his party's 2020 manifesto. This was a question asked of him last year. We went back and we looked at the 2016 manifesto. There is no evidence whatsoever that term limits were mentioned in that document. We also went and we looked at the subsequent document, the 2020 manifesto. There is no evidence that term limits were mentioned. So he's a flat-out liar. He's a proven liar. So when this idea of coming up with a peace ministry, it's nonsense. Because first of all, it won't address the things that it really should address, which is going back to what Herb said. You get to the root of the problem and you have people come and divulge their souls so that we can have a healing. That's not going to happen. This prime minister doesn't believe in healing. No. Second thing is, we're not even sure he's going to have a ministry. Well, here's the thing. He said, I've commissioned a study, and when the study comes in December, I am going to establish a ministry. How the hell can you decide to establish a ministry and you haven't even seen the report? Then the question is, why even commission a report? If you've decided in your mind, I am going to establish this ministry, then why did you say, well, I'm commissioning a report to see whether or not we should establish a ministry? He's putting the cart before the horse. He's not thinking. He's not thinking. He's listening to people around him. He's not thinking through what they're telling him. And that's why he's made so many mistakes, and he will continue to make these mistakes. Now, Andy mentioned something. He asked a question and none of us answered him. Well, I'll answer him. Andy, yes, the elections are slated to take, we believe that they will take place next year. At least the local elections will take place next year. The general elections, he has until 2025, I believe early 2025. And what they're doing is they're playing a waiting game to see if the statistics will prove useful to them. And at that point, they will call the general elections because they're afraid. They can't call it right now. They cannot call a general election right now. So with him, with the elections weighing heavy on his mind, he was supposed to call the local elections for February of next year. And if you notice, and let's watch this thing, and if you watch his speech at the conference, and what he said was, at a time of his choosing, at a time suitable next year, he will call it. He didn't say February. Everyone thought he was going to say February, but he's looking at the polls, and he's looking at the polling result, and he's like, he's going, wait a minute, I can't do anything with this. I can't call it. No, I'm going to lose. And remember, what we have to remember that politicians are not missionaries. Politicians are not NGOs. The number one goal of any politician is to secure re-election. It's not about the people. The people, they're secondary or tertiary or somewhere down the line. It's to do whatever I can to ensure that I will remain in power. So he'll say anything. He'll say, yes, we're going to have without even thinking about it. And people are going, yeah, peace ministry. And then when you ask them, what does this mean? Do you understand? They can't tell you. So to answer your question, Mikey, I don't think this is much. Well, I think this is much. Excuse me, much ado about nothing. It's not going to happen, and if it does happen, it's not going to have far-reaching effects. It's not going to go to the starting point. Won't be where Herb is saying it should go, and I agree with him. That's where we should start. You can't just start with the symptoms. You're going to have to start looking at the causes. And what he's doing, he's looking at the symptoms of his administration. He's saying, I've been responsible since 2016, so I will take it to 2016. Herb is saying, no, don't look at the symptoms, look at the causes. And the causes go back to the 60s and the 70s, and there's still people around who can come and testify as to what took place and why is it we are in the place where we are, and divulge their souls. Give us, the inner workings of their minds at that time. Tell us who instructed them to do what, and free themselves, because a lot of them, they're burdened. They're traumatized. They're walking around very much traumatized, including the Prime Minister. You don't think he's walking around traumatized? He's traumatized. Look at what he's done to the Jamaican people since 2016. So it's much ado about nothing, and if it does happen, it's not going to extend to where it should extend. That's
one thing is sure. He must call a local government election because that is mandated. He must call local government election by February 24th. Andy, you have hand up.
Let me come in. Two comments quickly. One, you have a rich field of thoughts and ideas that needs to be translated or converted into action. Now, what kind of action am I talking about? Am I talking about AK-47s? No. Maybe what we need to do is to put together a book from these discussions, put together a book, send it out to the people so that they read it, so that the people can say, we agree with the people who brought this book out, that there must be change. There must be a different way of doing things. That will add value big time. Secondly, I need to share my frustration with you on this platform. This platform is not really very user-friendly. We can't harvest information that we are sharing with you, so that on our platforms, some of us are speakers. On our international speaking engagements, we can say the people of Jamaica XYZ. This is what they say. I'm not able to go back, and I don't know how to get a recorded video or recorded information from this platform. I struggled the last time, and I'm sure we would need to find a better platform that can be user friendly. Getting back to the point of the book, we cannot just allow ourselves to vent frustrations. We must pen them down so that some of us can be satisfied and not push you against the wall, Mickey and all of you. I still want to know who killed Peter Tosh. I still want to know if Peter Tosh is a victim of the violence that we are talking about. For us in this part of the world, Peter Tosh was one of our serious engines of motivation, energy, and inspiration, determination, and a forged will to realize freedom after going to the battlefield and using the music of people like Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, Bob Marley, and all of those to drive ourselves to ensure that we play a role not only in South Africa, even in Zimbabwe. You know the Bob Marley song, Africa Unite, for the benefit of your people, when he was singing about Zimbabwe. Africa shall liberate Zimbabwe. I and I shall liberate Zimbabwe. You know that kind of music. We want to know who killed Peter Tosh. If they are in jail, we want to know who sent them to rob Peter Tosh. Was it a robbery or was it a staged robbery or fake robbery? Because these musicians that come from your part of the world were really giving us the energy throughout Africa to make sure that we wrestle the mantle of freedom from the hands of those who were pushing us against the world.
Okay, two things. First, the email. If you put your email, send me your email, Andy, and I'll send you all how to get the information. Second point, I must tell you, Maxine is the former manager of Bunny Wailer. So, Maxine, can you respond to what Andy is saying?
Also, Mikey, Andy needs to know that the program is on YouTube, Waterhouse Vibes, where you can access the recordings of the program.
Okay.
The general point he's making, though, how difficult it is to connect, we need to think about that, Mikey, and
Yes.
find a way to speak to that, because that if we're going anywhere, we have to address that.
Okay. All right. Maxine, the floor is yours.
Yes. Well, I think all the Wailers, well, certainly Peter and Bob Marley, their respective deaths have created more questions than answers, you know, and because they were so targeted, as Herb, is it Herb? He has this King Charles at Royal UK Salute.
Yes, Herb.
Herb, right? Okay. As Herb was saying, you know, we in 1976, in the middle of all of this political machinations, those were the days when, you know, Black Heart Man album, Legalize It, and Rastaman Vibration. That was 1976. You know what I mean? And that was in the middle of all of this upheaval. Certainly for Jamaica and certainly for the African continent, certainly in the southern parts of Africa. So I could see the questioning of what would seem to be like an internal gang gang outcome, because the artists, we were on the streets with the dons who themselves were political figures or political, aligned with political parties. And so, one would have to think, how were these people killed because of the same political violence that we're talking about that came and reshaped Jamaica. So it's interesting that Andy would pose that question because he was killed by, gang members out of downtown Kingston there. We don't know the machinations. There are all kind of theories as to what inspired what's his name, Lepo and all these people to go to the home and yeah, it remains that way because of the surroundings, wherein for my purpose, this discussion on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, if the government, it should not be up to the government to demand the institution of such a commission. I got from this discussion that the government could never institute that. It would be the people who have been traumatized and continue to be traumatized that would have to demand such a commission, independently. But it was good for the discussion to occur, because it brings it into the minds of the people as John says, in terms of a manifesto talking point. Is this violence that they're looking at? Because the violence is determined by our economics. It's not determined by our psychological state of mind. You understand? And so we have to look at relate all of this violence to our socioeconomic conditions, and not let them think it's, just people needed to be, get civic lessons, or, I heard on Rattigan's program, Betty and Blaine talking about another Ministry of Family Affairs. That was another, like way out thinking, like, wow, family, the family that they're talking about, the structure is due to economics. It's not due to love affair, or people falling in love or staying in love or whatever. All of this relationship is coming from our socioeconomic legacies and continuities, and it needs to be connected, rather than, oh, we need more civics in school and all of this. We need more economic solutions to, our apartheid is an economic apartheid. That is what I am more, thinking about. It's not about, oh, it's who controls 1% of the people controls 99% of the economics. You understand? And it does have a trickle down effect on the people, and on how our labor and why we have to migrate at such a high rate, our trained people, So, so I'm glad for the conversation, and I leave thinking that it's the people that must demand of the government, of both parties,
the direction it takes,
the truth and truth and reconciliation, and bring the United Nations in and tell them that these are the people that govern us. They don't seem to be able to manage this crime situation because they're not dealing with the root of it.
I won't allow myself to be fooled by the proposal by Andrew Holness. You know why? The GLP at this time has one thing on its mind, and that's winning the next election. Therefore, this party don't want to get entangled in any drawn out process called no Truth and Reconciliation Committee or ministry or whatever. That's not on their agenda. What's on the GLP's agenda is winning the next election. So, as I said, this is just apply. What happened was that at the conference, they built up a certain expectations in their people coming to the conference. A lot of the GLP people was of the expectation that the party is ready and Holness is going to call the election date. The assessment of the party is that they are not ready at this time. And they had to pull the plug and call in the election, which was like an anticlimax at the conference. If you notice, his speech, there was nothing sending out any expectations or any inspiration to the people. It fell flat at the end. So he just pulled something out of a hat and talk about this ministry of peace. It's not going to happen, right? The GLP don't want a reconciliation. They don't want any talk about reconciliation. Even though Mark Golding said them welcome it, none of the parties want anything to do with reconciliation because so many things is going to come out in any kind of situation like this that is going to be disturbing for both parties. It's not going to happen.
Well, on that note, can we go around final comments? We are now 2 hours since we start this journey. Let's some final remarks.
Can't tell every book by the cover.
Is that a statement or what? What is that? What is that?
That is my final remark. Can't tell every
All
book
right.
by the cover.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's move on to Maxine.
Well, my final remark is that I'm looking forward to next week to see what pops up on the horizon coming out of them observing our program. See how they react.
I need to say something on but I'll keep it for the Herb. Herb, you have the floor. You need to unmute.
Okay, all right, I'm with you guys again. It's funny because when we are trying to set a period of time for political violence in Jamaica, I can tell you from the Columbia University, Ivy League school in New York, from their academic commons, from their library, the evolution of political violence in Jamaica, 1940 to 1980, written by Karine Williams. It will identify clearly to you who the violent politicals were, who introduced violence into the system, and the fact that there are outstanding incidents, right? Investigation of social and political connection, and the events such as the Henry Rebellion in 1960, the Green Bay Massacre in 1978, the political murder of PNP candidate Roy McGann in 1980. This is what I guess she has outlined pretty well. The political violence reflected by the rise of dons such as Jim Brown and Wayne Sakadan Smith, who became independent of the patronage system. In other words, they shake off their government controls and became too independent. And when you become too independent, what we see now as back then, you got to die. And how do you die? You're going to die at the hands of the police or the army. Keep in mind, Claudius Massop died with his hands up and shot must be 40 or 50 times. Right? Keep in mind, we haven't even gotten beyond 1980 because you have a lot more things that occurred after that period of time. There's just too many things, too many incidences in Jamaica that were linked to politicians, and the politicians never serve a day in jail. That's the problem. It was the henchmen who carried out their wishes are the ones that served time or got killed or were hunted down like dogs. How did our people with gang affiliation, murders, how did people like Mossop and Bucky Thompson, how did these people get visas to go to the United States? This is why the US has a role to play in this. This is why the UK must answer as to why you stayed on the outside looking in when Jamaica was being undermined, when you were partially and wholly responsible for Jamaica's defense. We saw the same thing happen with Grenada, right? Now, the Canadians, on the other hand, what were they funding? They had a hand in the Rodney affair when Rodney was rejected from Jamaica and sent home to Guyana. We also saw the fact that the Canadians control all the banking, major banks like CIBC, Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Montreal, Scotiabank. You have a chain of different banks. They control the banking system. So they could also tell the government which tune to play and how to dance to each of the songs. So you have a history that needs to be revealed to the Jamaican people so that they understand the present and the future. Where are we going with everything? The idea behind opening up is to say, okay, here's how we were shackled. Here's how we lose the shackles. And here is how we map out our success for the 21st century. Because we have no plan for success going forward. 2030 is but a figment of somebody's imagination. And I have no idea if China going to be our savior and our salvation, or if the US is going to come back and play a role, or what the hell is going on, right? How do you encourage Jamaicans to move back home and build, and to move back home and participate in the island's success? Can we develop an overseas diaspora like Israel has done with the different Jewish organizations and movements? Is that even possible, right? Can we develop diaspora wealth and diaspora positive influence, not just influence, but positive influence, to create the same type of successes that we see Israel enjoys with his people in New York, in London, and where are we going? So this is, to me, the reason for mapping out where Jamaica has been and where do we need to go and how we're going to get there. And what are the bad influences we've got to shake loose of and to ensure it never happens again. So if the Prime Minister wants to talk out both sides of his mouth, more power to him. It's a free speech country. But if he's serious, those are the questions and answers. He is the cabinet and the opposition, which forms the government. They got to come up with those answers. Thanks.
Ratigan.
Yes. Let's start with the Prime Minister's declaration that we're at war. We're at war with ourselves. That's what he said 2 weeks ago. Exactly 2 weeks ago. We're at war with ourselves. And he said that the violence could be equated to a war zone. And he said there is no war going on, but yes, we have an ongoing war with ourselves. And so in that spirit, he proposed this Peace and Human Development Ministry. What that told me instantly was that he made the admission that he has failed to deliver on his social services promises. There's a failure of service delivery. There's a failure at the Ministry of Education. There's a failure, an abject failure at the Ministry of National Security. And by extension, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, whose job it is to protect, serve, and reassure the people of Jamaica. Don't forget that this is a prime minister who said that under his government, you will be able to sleep with your windows and your doors open. You dare not do that. Not if you hope to live to tomorrow. See, they just killed 6 people in one area 2 days ago, I believe. And there's a video making the rounds right now of a brother and sister who disappeared, and the video is showing someone burying them. These are the things we live with on a daily basis. These are, gone are the days when you would hear that one person got shot. Now, if one person is shot, it doesn't make the news. Has to be 3, 4, 5, 6. Has to be a massacre. You don't hear him talking about his enhanced security measures much. He has the Governor General sign off on them. ZOSO, Zone of Special Operations. SOEs, State of Emergency. We now know, or we have known, that the state of emergency is unconstitutional. Yet, he just declared another one, I think it was yesterday. He had one 2 weeks ago. The question is, where is the outcry? We are silent and by extension complicit in the unconstitutional acts being conducted by this government. And he will try to reach out to you or people similarly situated in South Africa. The High Commissioner, the present High Commissioner in South Africa, she actually opened the office. So she has some links there. I don't know if she knows General. She probably doesn't know the Minister of Police. She probably doesn't know the leader of the Hawks. She probably doesn't even know the person who's in charge of the Hawks for Gauteng. But I'm absolutely certain that she will try to reach out, because they have to make it seem as if they're trying to do something. Which brings me to the viability of this Ministry of Peace and Human Development. I'll reiterate, it either won't happen, or if it does, it will be limited in scope. It will only go back to 2016. He will not dare take it beyond that. And even when he goes back to 2016, the scope will be limited. It will not do a deep dive. It will not delve into the actions of these politicians. As a general rule, politicians don't go to prison in Jamaica. They don't. They just don't. It's a fact. A regular citizen and a politician, they can commit the same act, and we openly proclaim that there's one set of rules, one set of laws for everyone, but the application is different. That's the difference. The application, yes, it's, if you read it, it's one set of laws. The penal code, yeah, it applies to everyone, but how you apply it, that's the difference. So these politicians are not going to jail, and they're not going to commit political or criminal suicide. They're not going to kill themselves. They're not going to show up and do this, engage in a discussion in open forum and talk about their involvement in criminal activity that has affected people not of their ilk. They're safe and secure. And I maintain that the crime rate in Jamaica will continue the way it is on that upward trajectory, despite what you hear the Minister of information. He said with the, and I quote, he said with the JLP crime is going down, 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 but with the PNP crime is going up, up, up. He's lying. He's lying. But as I said, I maintain that, and it's a sad commentary, but it's true. Until they're affected by crime, you will see just marginal changes. They will tell you we're passing legislation, but legislation cannot control crime. Look, they passed a legislation the other day saying that, I tell you how contradictory this government is. They passed a legislation called the Firearms Act of 2022, and they said if you're caught with a firearm, it's 15 to life. They just sentenced a man to life. And what happens? The government turned around and is now in the Court of Appeal saying the punishment was too severe. Where have you heard this nonsense? You passed the law to control crime. You sentenced the man you gave him the mandatory sentence, the sentence that he's deserving of. And then he didn't even appeal himself. You turn around and you said, no, we have to appeal because the judge went way out of bounds. The judge shouldn't have given him life. This is the situation we live in. And if we think it's going to change by asking politicians to change, it will never, to quote my favorite minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kamina Johnson-Smith, that will never happen. Never. Here's how and I'll end with this. Here's how you will force change. You can force change by doing what the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation is doing, which is lawsuits. And lawsuits wherever you can find jurisdiction. They've come out and they've said that essentially, if you're in the diaspora, you have no standing to bring lawsuits. Yet this week they were here trying to raise money from the diaspora. I mean, last week. So lawsuits. Second one, public relations campaign.
Money bag.
Yes. Andy, I'll have you know that we have beach apartheid in Jamaica. Where, you remember back in those days, you have colored beaches, black beaches, and the beaches for whites only. We have something similar to that in Jamaica. Not exactly the same, but similar. Where, as a Jamaican, I don't have access to all the beaches in Jamaica. And the third thing is to look at the background of some of these suspected politicians, suspected in terms of corruption. And there are a lot of them. I mean, there's a lot of them. Now, what came out of something that happened last week was out of frustration, we decided that we were going to have all the people on YouTube criticizing the government to come together on a platform once every 2 weeks. And we had the inaugural meeting this past Thursday. And out of that meeting came an initiative whereby we're now going to do two additional things. We are going to approach Congress, the American parliamentarians, and to say to them, listen, the Jamaican government is corrupt and you're supporting them with American taxpayer dollars. That's a serious charge. That is going to go a long way. They're paying attention now to that. And the second one is something that's never been done before, which is to protest. And when I say protest, not in Jamaica, protest in New York, where they have the CG, protest in DC, where they have the embassy, protest in Miami, protest in London, protest in Toronto. And you'd be amazed at how many people from those parts of the world chimed in and said, yes, we're ready. We are, frankly speaking, we're frustrated, we're tired of this nonsense going on by this government. We need a change because we've given them enough opportunities to change, and they've made it abundantly clear that they have no interest in what we have to say because they are firm believers in the 9-day wonder. They believe that all you do, you raise hell and it will last for 9 days and then we'll just move on to something else and it will be buried. I just made a note here about something. Okay, here is something that's like a 9-day wonder. People have forgotten about this. We talk about the Chinese and how the Chinese are bringing in substandard goods into Jamaica, and the Bureau of Standards, they need to do this, they need to do that, blah, 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 blah. How many of you remember that the Prime Minister on national TV went to a market and bought a knockoff Nike shorts in plain view. Plain view. And then they were arresting people for selling these same goods. That is what I'm talking about. So it's time for us to get into some good trouble. I'm prepared. I've started already. Herb is alongside me. So I urge all of the listeners to get into good trouble. Join us, the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation, ojldf.org. Go to the website. Make a contribution. Because only through your contribution will we have convictions. And whether the conviction is in Jamaica, we would much rather it be here in the U.S. Because in the U.S., they get a chance to go experience prison life. In Jamaica, even if they find them guilty, they'll probably give them, house arrest or whatever. Yes, Janet, you're right. International media attention. That's what we're seeking. And that's what we are about. That's what we hope to get. And I'm absolutely sure, I'm supremely convinced that we will get that. And that's when you'll start to see changes being made. Thank you very much for having me on the platform, Mikey. And thanks to all of the panelists.
Hold on a minute. Gentlemen, Herb.
The reason for the email addresses.
Just a minute, just a minute. Can we turn to Andy to give his closing remarks?
Andy.
You're muted, Andy.
One of my old strategy advisors, one of those guys who lived 2,500 years ago, says to me when he advises me on a matter of this nature, the wise win before they fight, whilst the ignorant fight to win. His name is Zhuge Liang. The wise win before they fight, whilst the ignorant fight to win. So what is the morale in the story? As long as our strategy is not coherent, it's a hit and run kind of vehicle that will experience stop, start. We will continuously engage in these discussions. And Mikey, I'm not coming onto this platform ever again to discuss this subject. I have played my part. I will be happy when I see a product in my hands of what you have written. That's the only thing that will bring me onto this platform. I have donated 4 hours, 2 hours the last time. No, it was 3 hours the last time. Today it's 2 hours. It's 5 hours all in all. I enjoy talking. I love my platform. I love my mics. I love engaging with audience, especially intelligent audience like yourselves. What I don't enjoy is us as a people who are under assault and just decide to fold our arms and just talk like a woman would say, or like a person who would say, slap me again. You slap them. And then they say, slap me again. And you slap them. And they say, slap me again. And you slap them. And they walk away crying. I will be happy not to be part of that kind of a conduct, but the conduct that says, I have been slapped. I'm not giving over the left cheek. I am going to fight in a different way on a different platform. Unless and until I get a book from you, all of you on this podium, I'm not coming onto this platform again. I have given you 5 hours of my valuable time, my insights, my energy, my emotions about the death of Peter Tosh and Bob Marley and all others. I don't want to talk about my brother who was sold out for rice, for a bowl of rice. His name is Marcus Garvey. I'm not going to talk about that because some of those things are too painful for some of us. To other people, it might not mean anything because they have assumed big, big offices. They are controlling the land and they are running the economy of the country. To us, the ordinary man in the street, to us who analyze, to us who put strategies in place and tactics and execute tactics, we hold different views, not violent and not militant, but very demanding of leadership to account and to be held responsible. We have a responsibility to write. Now we can use ChatGPT to write whatever we want to write, which is within the confines of the law, which is not inciting and instigating, but only engaging the people's souls and spirits and minds to make sure that out of the 6 people, including His Royal Highness who couldn't come, who couldn't get through, we multiply this by 12 million people behind His Royal Highness and many others who are in your contacts and many others who I interact with internationally and at many other places locally. So I want to, on a parting shot, say, together we can do more. It's a slogan of the African National Congress. Maybe not in the ANC's context, but in a context that says, when we are together, we can write more, we can talk more, and we can act more, and we can achieve more. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to get off the platform, but I really meant it. We need to find another platform for us to can engage. I have found it very frustrating with the platform. I can't even put my background picture. I wanted to put, I'll post it to you, Will, you'll send it to the other guys. I wanted to send you a pic of Mbuyiselo, that guy who held Hector Peterson when he was killed in 1976, that young boy. Those are some of the things that I wanted to prick your conscience and your spirits with, so that we can rise and write and make sure that our people read us and ensure that our legacy is preserved in books and documents. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you for joining us. I must say this to you before you leave. We are working on a manifesto, and as soon as that is finished, we'll send a copy to you. But definitely we are not going in terms of a book, but we are developing a manifesto to sort of address some of the concerns we have about Jamaica. Okay, that's point number 1. Point number 2, Brother Anansi, we have a folk hero in Jamaica called Brother Anansi. You know, say one thing, you do the opposite. That is what in Jamaica.
Anansi the spider.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
so it's gonna take us some time, but eventually we're gonna get there. Okay, gentlemen, I think it is clear that there's doubt, a lot of doubts as to the Prime Minister intention, and it's justifiable doubts because we have experienced the politicians in Jamaica, both PMP and GLP, and we know that they say one thing and do the opposite. So that is a challenge for us. You know, how to hold a politician accountable and move the process forward.
Mikey.
Go ahead, brother.
Mikey, you know, when you invite a prince or a king and something happens and is not able to come into your house, you know you are going to be fined. I'm sure His Royal Highness will find you and send a note to you of a fine. I don't know who's going to help you because
I'll have Rattigan.
I'm not part of that discussion. I respect protocol. I'll be behind you, Mikey, when the prince sends you a note of a fine. And on a more serious note, His Royal Highness is going on a festive drive to organize books, school shoes for the kids in the far-flung areas of the countryside. From the Goodwill Foundation, named after his father. His father at this time of the year would provide little sweets, food parcels, you know, to ease the burden of those who can't help themselves, and provide school shoes for January. So we have 4 provinces that we're going to visit, and we are requesting all of you on this platform to join His Royal Highness in terms of the books, in terms of gadgets, in terms of those things that will make sure that your little cousins, your family members down in KZN are able to write on the digital platform. I'm sure we will set up a Zoom link, myself and him, and invite all of you onto this platform and engage in a discussion. I am sure we can be able to do that by tomorrow or Tuesday in the evening, and spend 30 minutes to an hour talking amongst ourselves on the Goodwill Drive, the Goodwill Foundation Festive Drive. And I'm sure that the Prince will invite you to the late King Goodwill Zwelithini annual lecture, where the Prince is going to deliver the maiden lecture, and also the winter warmers in winter for some blankets, for some socks for the grandmothers and grandfathers and people with disabilities and the little ones. And further on to that, in September, you guys must come through for the Goodwill Foundation Excellence Award. Excellence Award, look at the job that you are doing, Mikey, and all of you here. The awards will be going towards the effort that yourselves as men are putting in displaying leadership that will ease the frustrations of the people of Jamaica. So who knows, you might be nominated yourselves as the 4 of you here for the Goodwill Foundation's Excellence Award around September, October.
Thank you for that information. Thank you for that information. And if we're any way we can help and support, let us know.
Yes.
Let us know, because as you can see, you South Africans are very dear and close to us, you know. So we ain't going to turn our back on you. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Oh, lady gone.
Gentlemen and lady, thank you very much for a very informative discussion. To the audience, I say again, thank you very much. And remember, like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. Okay? Until next week. Well, sorry. There is I think we should take a a Christmas break. John raised that with me, and I like the idea. So we would not meet next Sunday or the following Sunday. Okay? We're going to take a break. Is that okay with everyone here?
So what's the date we start back?
We're going to start right after the New Year, the Sunday after the New Year. That is what date?
Sound like the 6th.
Okay, we can do that.
The 6th. Yeah.
Part of the culture.
The 6th is,
no, the 7th.
The 6th is Saturday.
Yeah, the 7th.
The 7th.
Yeah.
All right.
The 7th of January.
Yeah. John, you were saying?
No, I'm saying you shouldn't feel a way to do it, you know. It's part of the culture. Both the Jamaican and American people celebrate